Hello everybody, it's Tommy and welcome back to another speed build for the Disney Save. Today we are taking a mini break from Princess and the Frog and we're going to be doing something from a different Louisiana Disney movie that is called The Rescuers. So The Rescuers, I feel personally, falls a little bit under the radar in terms of popularity, in terms of how much maybe people want to see a ton of stuff regarding it in the save file. I never really hear anybody talk about it, and the only reason it came up in the save file at all, to be honest, is because originally when I was doing my very first version of Willow Creek, I was doing research to see which types of movies take place from the Disney universe in New Orleans, in Louisiana, or have like Bayou theming or anything like that to kind of pair with Princess and the Frog as like the main film for this world, considering that Willow Creek sort of embodies all of that. And The Rescuers came up because The Rescuers takes place pretty much like most of the movie in, I believe, what is actually called the Devil's Bayou, Louisiana. That's kind of like where they're calling it. And essentially, one of the main characters, the villain of the movie, Madame Medusa, lives on this abandoned boat in the middle of the Louisiana Bayou. It's disgusting and filthy and rotten and broken. And I actually did build this boat to exist in the save file a long time ago. But I was kind of thinking to myself, considering that The Rescuers is not a super popular film, and considering that Madame Medusa as a Disney villain almost never comes up, you never see her on like Disney merchandising, and I never have like my patrons bring her up or anything like that, I did not think she would be a particularly popular character to include, or that anybody would really want to play with her. So what I did, instead of actually like building her little boat home the first time around, I built the boat and then I added some lore into the Disney save. If you went onto this build's little household description, it was going to say that basically Eli LaBeouf, Big Daddy LaBeouf from Princess and the Frog, had purchased this boat and he redesigned it and had it renovated to be updated, modern. It actually had more of like a vintage glamour look to it, very like 1920s, 1930s inspired, and it was a celebrity nightclub. So there is a door from Get Famous that you can use where you can actually set the rating, like the star rating on the door for which types of Sims are allowed to come into the establishment through that door. And I think I had it set to maybe 3-star celebrities and above, so that all of the local celebrities from Princess and the Frog specifically, like Big Daddy LaBeouf and Prince Naveen, Tiana, they all would have came here to sort of party and have their little vintage glamour on the boat night. And that was my way of making this boat exist in the save and have a piece of The Rescuers in the save file, but not have it be something that I didn't think people would want to use. Now, that meant that Madame Medusa actually ended up in a weird situation where I did want to include her in the save file, but I didn't want her to live here anymore because I kind of took her home, right? So I ended up moving her into the Louisiana View shotgun homes just to fill some of those up a little bit. Those are the houses that Princess Tiana's mother lives in, or Princess Tiana would have grown up in when she was younger. And that worked really well for a long time. The issue is now I don't really like cross-movie integration in the Disney save. So that means that I had a Rescuers character living in a Princess and the Frog themed home, and now that we have so much room in the save file, I don't need to do stuff like that anymore. There used to be some old households where I kind of like mushed people together from different movies because it just was what it was. If I wanted to include those characters in sort of like a livable way, I needed to have them live with other characters that realistically they shouldn't even really know. And I don't have to do that anymore. So I started toying with the idea of actually turning this boat back into the residential that it was always supposed to be. And additionally, I'm going to be adding some characters to the household to kind of fluff it up a little bit so that it's a little bit more interesting and you hopefully are enticed to play with it a little more than just Madame Medusa living here. And that means Madame Medusa will be moving in here, her little henchman slash associate, Mr. Snoops, and Penny, the little orphan girl that she does unfortunately kidnap, as well as Brutus and Nero, who are her crocodiles, but I have already made in the save file as dogs wearing like these little crocodile costumes. So the next thing you guys see should be the updated creative sim that kind of pairs with today's residential, where you get to see these new characters that I'm throwing in. And all of their bedrooms are going to be included today as well. Penny lives on the very top floor, and Mr. Snoops and Madame Medusa live in the underside of the boat on the bottom floor. The other main issue with the version that I had built of the Devil's Bayou originally being a nightclub and everything, it was so based on the bayou. It had so many of those bayou trees, and it just didn't aesthetically really match the neighborhood. It was right near some other residentials, being Princess Tiana's mother's home specifically, and that area of the map, it just like conflicted because you had this like super watery bayou themed abandoned boat, and then you had the shotgun homes that are a little bit like aesthetically different, and there was like a playground in the neighborhood, which was always kind of funny because her home was across the street from a playground, and it didn't flow like as perfectly as I always try to get it. Nowadays, when I'm planning the save file, especially in Oasis Springs, I really learned that this is the best way to go about this. I really like to try to get neighborhoods to be as coordinating as possible. And that might mean that occasionally we have a cross movie in terms of the neighborhood, like not everything in a given neighborhood is going to be from the same film, but I'm not too worried about that. That's not really a problem. I would rather that everything looks aesthetically correct and kind of pairs well together in a given neighborhood, especially when you load into certain neighborhoods and you can't really see outside of that neighborhood anyway. These older base game worlds are kind of famous for that. You can't see anything outside of like this neighborhood. I don't believe if you look off in the distance and things like that, you can see like Lottie LaBeouf's home or the Tiana mansion. So you're kind of just stuck to the visuals of this area, and therefore making everything look like it fits well is going to look more successful in like the design of the save file overall. And since I've already been working with Bayou theming, and we've got Tiana's Bayou Adventure, we have Mama Odie's treehouse, which is supposed to be in the middle of the bayou, and then in the last video I built a little lily pad bayou lounge based after Evangeline from Princess and the Frog. Having this boathouse in the middle of the bayou in this neighborhood was going to be the perfect way to clear out the neighborhood and just do the best thing possible as far as rearranging the map goes. And that meant also that I had to rebuild from scratch, because I'm changing it from being a nightclub to a residential, and the nightclub that I built was renovated. It was clean and polished and white marble and trimming of gold here and there. It was something that had a lot of money poured into it. This is an actual film recreation. So it is holes in the walls, holes in the roof, crack, broken fencing, barely running. And in fact, in the film, if you Google a picture of this, it's almost like it's broken in the middle and kind of sinking in from the middle. It's not even sitting in the water very nicely at all. It is not supposed to be inhabited. It's very much abandoned. Nobody should be living here. And that's kind of the point. So Madame Medusa, unfortunately, kidnaps Penny and then is hiding out here because she's looking for what is supposed to be like a diamond that's somewhere in the area. And she finds a mine that she can send Penny into because she's small, but Madame Medusa cannot go in herself and find it. It's also dangerous, so she doesn't want to do it herself. So the point of kind of living here is, one, obviously it's abandoned, it's free. She doesn't seemingly have a ton of money in the film, although she does run a pawn shop, and that might be coming up later on in the save. I'm not quite sure. But I think Madame Medusa's point is sort of that if she finds this diamond, she'll become super rich and she never has to live her old lifestyle. She doesn't have to run her business. So she's hiding out here on this very secluded boathouse with Mr. Snoops, and they have very different living situations as far as bedrooms go to Penny. Penny is on the top floor, very exposed to the elements, very minimal furniture. I'll talk about this more when we actually go in to do the interior decor. And then her bedroom is kind of decked out. She's got lots of makeup, little trinkets, some gems and things like that from her pawn shop. I hope it makes sense why I decided to do this and why I decided to move these guys here. And to be honest, I basically recreated the exact same shell as before. It is a little bit different. The original one I built was on an angle, and that was just to make it look as boat-like as possible. And I do feel like for some reason putting it on the angle almost helps with the shape, but this lot was not going to work for that. It doesn't call for it in terms of space. So I did just put it in the same sort of like parallel as the lot. And then I focused on making sure that it was playable, that there was enough room here for all of the characters that I wanted. In the movie, this is actually a 4-story boat. And I tried originally, you'll see at like the early clips of the video, to make it 4 stories. And it was just gonna look really kind of crazy. Even on the smallest wall height, it was way too tall. It kind of didn't make sense. You have to think about the fact that sometimes because I can only use 4 stories to build palaces and castles, and obviously I use foundation and sort of like lifting up different towers to different levels to give that really grand feel of like a large mansion or a palace or a castle. But when you do that to something that is supposed to be a little bit more on the smaller, simple side, like today's build, and you give it the full 4 stories, it's just going to be extremely large for no reason. And especially when doing the interior, I wanted this to be like minimal furniture, minimal design, minimal decor, because it's not supposed to be a home. This is something that Madame Medusa has taken over and used as a home, but it is not in a state to be inhabited by anybody. So there really should not be like a ton of furniture or nice things here necessarily. I have actually strayed a little bit in terms of the water wheels as well. I want to point out that those water wheels are from Debug and they come from the Cottage Living pack. They will actually turn in live mode, which is really cool. It's going to give some life and animation to this lot. And if the boat was moving, it is the type of boat that would sort of use something like that to like push and propel the water. But typically whenever I have seen photos of this type of boat, I tend to see that the water wheels are usually towards the back. There is certain versions where it's on the side. Maybe my little boat experts can kick in here and tell me what the difference is, or if there's like a particular name for the difference that I'm describing here. But I think it looks more boat-like if you put the wheel wells on the back, and the movie version unfortunately had them on the side. So in order to create like the most effective look overall and really get the point across that this is a boat, I wanted to put some on the back so that it felt boat-like to me, and then some on the side for the resemblance to the movie. And obviously it does have to be noted that this is stationary. It's sitting in some little crusty pond in the middle of a bayou, and it should have been, in a perfect world, a part of a bigger, larger lake bayou region that is a little bit more sprawling. And really, in reality, if I could do like create a world, all 3 or 4 of the locations in this area would all kind of be a part of one another. There would be no breaks or separations in between. It would be like one large body of bayou water, and then all of these different things would be like situated in their own coves and areas inside the bayou. No streets, no lamps, no any sidewalk or anything like that. But that's just one of those like making the best of the situation kind of things. And I think overall, I am so much more happy with how everything is turning out in regards to this Willow Creek reno than my original version of Willow Creek. It's a little complicated because I actually did Willow Creek version 1 and then I did another renovation on it a few years ago. So I'm sometimes referencing that very first version and sometimes I'm referencing the second renovation. This is technically my 3rd and final reno on Willow Creek, but I have to say, like, looking at the progress I've made and the aesthetic and the overhead map view, it is perfect. It's exactly what I always imagined that it should be, and I feel like all of the choices I've been making and the changes are spot on. Like, this is going to be such a great world by the time it's done, so this is really worth all the effort that's going into it, I promise. Now, when I originally included the rescuers in the Disney save, I only made Madame Medusa because she lives here and because I felt like the other characters, although relevant, hadn't really come up yet. The 2 main characters in the movie are Bernard and Bianca. They are mice, and they are like the little rescuer team that comes to save Penny from this treacherous boat living style. But technically, they live in New York City. And so even though like half of this movie takes place in New Orleans, it didn't really come up to necessarily make Bernard and Bianca yet. They should come up in the future, and I do plan to go back to certain characters like that. Also to note, Penny has adopted parents that she goes with at the end of the movie that also live in New York City. And I would like to create them later on as well so that you can remove Penny from this situation if it's something that you would like to do. Obviously, this is a terrible, terrible situation for a child, for anybody really, but this is a dark kind of like twisted Disney movie, and it's really sad and really messed up. And every time I've ever seen this film, I do cry a little bit because it's just way darker than anything that Disney does nowadays. So if you have a problem with this, I totally understand, and you can remove Penny from the situation at some point. I just have not put them into the game yet for you to be able to do so. I'm hoping to give her like maybe her own home that she can move into and everything. We definitely are going to have the space for those types of things later on. So do not worry about Miss Penny here. I do want to also say that I feel like even though I am tackling like Disney films and a lot of them can be very sweet, cookie cutter, nice, kind theming, there is some dark tones, especially for certain movies, and some realistic tones that I don't really want to shy away from. I think it adds some detail and fun to the save that can be just a little bit different of a situation. Not everybody is a prince and a princess that like perfectly falls in love and lives happily ever after. And I think that this is a way to put put in some different theming and some different ideas and still obviously stay within Disney parameters. So even though this isn't like a great scenario for Penny, I don't want to not have it be here because I think it is something that is like sort of valuable to explore. With that being said, Madame Medusa was the only one in the save file originally, but I am updating this household. So I am adding in Penny and I'm adding in Mr. Snoops. That is the henchman character. Mr. Snoops and Madame Medusa are getting like these really nice sort of ish bedrooms, and then Penny just doesn't get a whole lot. They do show Penny's bedroom and Madame Medusa's bedroom in the film, so both of those end up being film recreations. Mr. Snoops I had to kind of go off of vibes. They don't actually show anything for him, but he does live here. And in the second renovation I did for Willow Creek, I did update Madame Medusa's household to include her 2 crocodiles. I made them both, I think they're pugs. You'll see them in the next video. I am going to be doing a creatism that pairs along with today's speed build. It will just be an update to add those additional characters from the rescuers into this household, with all of the other rescuer characters to come in the future in a different video, different time later down the line. I will be taking a look at Medusa in that video as well and maybe updating her a little bit, but I did update her recently when I put out the new version of the Disney save, and honestly she was terrible and perfect the first time. I didn't really need to change anything. I am always looking for like updated hair or updated dresses and things for characters like her where they're a little bit older in my Disney save roster, so they might be using some older pack stuff, and that sometimes means that like the quality of the individual pieces are not super great, if you know what I mean. Like some of the base game stuff is not as nice as like newer packs. Now as far as the layout of the home, it is a 3-story. The kitchen is actually the main entry point off the front of the boat. It was really just the only place that something like that fit. I don't think if this boat was existing in real life that is where a kitchen would go, and it doesn't really make sense in regards to the floor plan, but it could have been something else, and then Madame Medusa had to repurpose it into a kitchen just so that she could stay here as well. If it was just Penny, I don't even know if she would have gone that far, but she also lives here, so I can picture her bringing in some furniture for her own comfort, and then Mr. Snoops being in charge of like taking care of her crocodiles and cooking her food, and I think that's kind of like the main point of why he's there. And then leading off of that is the living room. The living room is shown. It has a couple of nicer pieces of furniture, again, because they're Medusa's. She likes her couch. She likes to sit. She also weirdly has like bowls of gemstones from her pawn shop on her table. It looks like so much stuff, like wealth-wise. So you have to wonder why she is so poor off. It could be fakes. It could be like knockoffs and stuff like that. I did recreate it and put it in there, and I actually ended up using like the Kyber crystals that you can get from the Journey to Batu pack, just because they're so strikingly similar and you can like pile them up in a little basket and give a similar sort of vibe. There is jewelry around this location as well. It's all kind of like stuff from her. She likes that stuff. She likes to collect. She obviously like wants that big main diamond, so it's kind of her thing. And then there is a chase scene between Bernard and Bianca and the crocodiles that takes place in that living room area, so you actually get to see a really big chunk of it and how it's kind of laid out. There's an organ in there, like a very old one, and you also can see that there's some original fixtures of the boat like in the living area. Even though it's been repurposed into like kitchen, living room, dining room sort of thing, there is original lighting fixtures, piping, the columns and cracks in the wall, dust, dirt, griminess, cobwebs, all of those things from it being like a very old boat that's now being repurposed into a home still kind of exist in certain areas of the ship. Impressively enough, I was able to fit multiple staircases into this build. Originally, I was thinking I'd probably have to go with a ladder to get to this upstairs, but it didn't make total sense. Like, we do need to have a set of stairs. Ships like this typically can fit stairs somewhere, but I would say that in my experience, like especially there's a very similar ship like this that will take you from the transportation depot at Disney World across to Magic Kingdom. You board the ship from kind of like the back or the front, depending on how it boards up, and then there is a set of stairs right in the middle that will lead you up to the upper deck. But obviously that's not going to work for the floor plan of this home, so fitting the stairs in does become a little bit of a challenge. But I did manage to fit some that go up and some that go down so that we have a basement or down below deck level of the boat. And then the upstairs is Penny's bedroom. It's very small. It's attached to the wheelhouse, which is like the little steering station for the captain of the ship. So there's some old, again, like pieces of the ship in there, some relics, some old crates, and the original wheel that probably was like equipped on the ship. But then we actually get to see her bedroom in the movie, and weirdly enough, she has like this bed, and the bed is attached to a headboard that is shaped like a giant wheel. And I don't think think that that wheel, it probably was decoration if I had to guess anything, but it was kind of like Disney's little way of being like, hey, we're on a boat, look, there's boat stuff. So I thought that was kind of funny. I wanted to make sure I included it. And then as far as like her bedroom goes, her bed specifically, I could tell was like a pop-up bed of some kind. It is like a cot. It's not nice at all. It's uncomfortable. And I wish, to be honest with you, I had something a little bit more beat up than the version that I went with, because what I gave her is still too nice in comparison to the one that she has in the movie. And then the rest of her room is necessities. She has one side table with like a little candle on it. She has a dresser that, once again, the version I gave her, still too nice. Very similarly shaped with the mirror on top, kind of like vanity style. The one she had in the film, not as nice, I promise you. And then she has like one single nightgown that she changes into in the film, and it's hanging on the wall in one scene, and that's literally it. The only other thing of note is that she has a teddy bear that she carries around everywhere with her called Teddy, so I made a little shout out to that by putting one teddy bear in her bedroom. No toys, no chest, no anything fun to use. I'm so sorry for this poor little sim, but this is like a situation where you could obviously change it if you wanted to. You can upgrade her room, you can do a fixer upper challenge, you can delete Medusa if you like hate the whole thing and you do not like the vibes of this at all. That's totally fine. I understand. You also just don't have to play with it if this is like something that you're like, I don't really want to touch on this. Totally get that. But I'm doing the movie recreation here. This is how it looked. This is what it was. And to be so honest with you, I probably gave her more stuff in her room than is even shown in the film. Like, I gave that poor little girl a carpet because I just thought about her little cold sim feet on the floor of this boat and how there's holes everywhere, even in like the cracks of her windows and the broken windows that she has in her bedroom, and how freezing cold she probably would be. So I put like a rug in her room. I've done the best I can here. The windows I'm using all over the boat are actually from the Life and Death pack, which was really great because I had mentioned in a previous video that some of the stuff I find from that pack is a little bit unusable because it has this more like morbid skulls look to it, and it has like in the intricacy and in like the carvings of the different wood and the glass paneling and stuff on the pieces, you can see skulls. That's like their main repetitive sort of iconic theme from that pack, and it becomes unusable if I'm trying to do like the LaBeouf mansion, even though it aesthetically looked really well. But for here it works because it's cracked and broken, a little bit rusty, and then if something has a skull on it, obviously this is a villain's lot, so it works. And I did remember very late in this build, that pack also comes with those new pieces that you can put on the floors and on the roof that creates this look of like a hole in the floor, and you can kind of see down into the floor below it. At least like theoretically it creates like this gap, but you can't physically see down into the next level, if that makes sense. So I do include some of that here and there just to really send it home how in bad condition this boat actually is. It also only has one singular bathroom. It is located on the very bottom basement level with Madame Medusa's room and Mr. Snoop's room. I feel so bad for Penny. She's gonna have to go all the way down there in the middle of the night, but also if you think about like the layout of a ship like this, it's what makes sense. Typically, you will have to go downstairs to find a restroom or something similar. Once this boat is done, and after the residential cast video that's going to be coming out next, I will be moving on to a new neighborhood that is no longer Bayou themed, so we can say goodbye to the Louisiana Bayou, but I am going to be switching probably back to Princess and the Frog. There's quite a few more little changes and things that I'm going to be doing to some lots, and then there is like brand new lots that are Princess and the Frog themed that are coming back for multiple neighborhoods in the Disney save. So we're going to switch back to that. I just needed to take like a little bit of a detour to focus on the rescuers. One, because it comes in this area and like kind of comes up and fits really well. And I did think about skipping it, but I really like completing the neighborhoods now. It's like kind of my thing. If I can complete a little area, it helps me feel like everything is flowing well and I can see my progress and I can feel very complete about it. So the neighborhood I'll actually be tackling next is the one that previously had the Louisiana View shotgun homes. It also had the Maldonia Estate, which was Prince Naveen's parents' home that I built for them in New Orleans. There's a lot to talk about in that neighborhood because it is getting a ton of changes, I'm not gonna lie. Considering that this neighborhood got a ton of changes and I pulled lots from that neighborhood to put here, they're kind of like switching places, but there's so much that's changing overall. It's not even really worth getting into in this video because you're gonna want to see it and it's gonna make more sense when I'm kind of like in the process of doing it. With that being said as well, the nightclub version of the Devil's Bayou is leaving the Disney save forever and officially. If you really, really love it and you really, really want it, I would go grab it off of the gallery now. I'm taking it down. As soon as this world is done and I like clear everything out, I'm gonna remove it. I will not be updating it anymore, and this is the new official official version that I will be maintaining for the Disney Save. I would like to put a celebrity nightclub back in, and I could see doing that possibly in a different world, like maybe Del Sol Valley when all of the Get Famous stuff really comes up, or it could come up in a different world, I don't really know. But I do ultimately think that moving this back to be a residential, having the characters live here, and adding a few more characters to make it more like interesting is definitely the better choice. Now moving on to Madame Medusa's bedroom, she has a huge room. It's on the bottom floor of the ship. It's kind of like near the bathroom area, but she does not have her own ensuite or something like that. I can imagine that this was potentially the captain's quarters of the ship originally. When you do see this room in the movie, it's painted white, which is contrasting to like the rest of the darker wood tones of the ship. And I think that would be because it was intended to be sort of more livable, or somebody's bedroom, or maybe even like a nicer dining room or ballroom that the ship would have taken guests into or something like that. But it's not untypical for ships to have like some kind of living quarters or some kind of arrangements that are a little bit more private for the crew specifically, even if they're not making like long haul trips across the ocean, which this boat definitely wouldn't have been. So it already looks a lot nicer because I've gone with the white wood tones and it's not as dirty and filthy as the rest of the boat, but the floor definitely was. It's broken and cracked, and what I actually did was used I think it's the Western wood, and it might come from the Get Famous pack or it might come from the Horses pack, I'm not sure. And then I used some cracked tiles from the Werewolves pack, and I laid that over the top of it in random spots, sort of sporadically, to give this effect of like the wood almost ripping away off of the tile, or the tile has ripped away off of the top of the wood. It doesn't really matter, but either way, it looks really gross and old and just like a floor that needs refinishing. You also get to see in the film that she has quite a few like purple drapes sort of around in the corners. She has this little nook with a vanity in it that she does her makeup at. She has a desk where she is mapping out and exploring areas and looking at maps of like Louisiana as she looks for that diamond. You can see her bed. You can see that she has like some collectibles around, some gemstones, some jewelry. She has definitely more things, more lavishness. I think she might be into fashion as well. She has quite a few pieces of clothing kind of like hanging on the walls and things like that. I wish we could do something like that, but the only effect that I could really give in this build was to do a mannequin, and there was a specific blue dress that she has hanging near her vanity that kind of caught my eye. So I wanted to pay some reference to that by putting a mannequin in here, and I am eventually going to dress that in a blue dress that's similar to the one from the movie. But her colors, sort of aesthetically, she pretty much only wears red, and she kind of has that one red outfit in the movie. Her hair is like an orangey red. She does makeup that is a little bit more on the intense side, I would say. She's got a lot of makeup on, a lot of eyeshadow. It looks like maybe she even pencils in her eyebrows, so she clearly likes makeup. But as far as her bedroom goes, there was pops of orange, weirdly enough, and there was a lot of purple. It might be maybe her favorite color. So I made sure to include literally all of that. This room is a pretty good recreation of her space without being able to do like a full 360 of the bedroom. And granted that I sometimes have to change the layout of a bedroom very slightly depending on like where the door is and how the scene sort of goes. Like a door might be closer to something else, but because of the way that the boat is designed, I have to have the door in a certain location. Or it's very possible that her bedroom was actually on the main deck level of the ship, and so it should have had windows. But again, because I couldn't do the 4-story ship, I've just put her down in this basement level, so there's no windows to work with, and so I'm trying to like decorate the walls and kind of clutter up the space a little bit more in place of where windows and more drapery should have gone. Her room does have some of those cracks in the walls, the cobwebs, the cracks in the floor, but it's definitely not as dirty and as bad as other parts of the ship. I think when she found this boat, she probably would have picked the nicest area of the ship, let's be so honest, and said, well, this is my bedroom, and then she would have had a bunch of her stuff from New York City shipped over so that she was at least comfortable while she was here. And she's got like nice shoes on the floor and multiple rugs in her bedroom and spotlighting for her vanity, so she's living large on this crusty dusty little ship. Something that was included in the film but I didn't really get to as far as the build was kind of like this area on the lower deck. that Mr. Snoops would have hid fireworks. So there is one scene in the movie that Penny tries to run away from this house, and they light up the bayou with fireworks in an effort to make it lighter outside during the middle of the night when she tries to escape, so that they can see around better. And it also kind of creates chaos and loudness and things like that. It makes it harder for Penny to get away, essentially. And so Mr. Snoops keeps a bunch of fireworks and crates and stuff down on the lower deck, and he is seen going down there and using it. There's also an elevator on this ship, but I didn't know where to put that, and even if I had pulled one out of debug, it wouldn't have worked anyway, so it was just something that kind of would have taken up space. If I had a nook or something that I couldn't fill, and I felt like it really needed to be there, or I needed to fill something, put something there, I probably would have made a debug fake similar looking elevator, but it's just something that would have taken up space and been aesthetically correct, but not actually functional, and not super important in regards to the film anyway. All that to say, the space down here is much better utilized by the 2 bedrooms and the 1 bathroom, and it's just going to make it a more functional build overall and more fun to use and play with. The longer bedroom right next door is Mr. Snoop's room. I had pretty much nothing to go off of in terms of personality and how to decorate this space. I can assume that it had similar white wallpaper considering Medusa's room. I can assume that it had similar fixtures, and that Medusa would probably get some stuff here for him, maybe a slightly nicer bed than at least Penny got, or a nightstand that's at least a little bit better, but I can't imagine she would have imported or brought in a bunch of furniture for him the way that she did for her. So I made his room definitely more simple, and he has no personality. He's one of those typical henchman characters that's just there for the plot. He doesn't show any type of interest in anything, so whenever that kind of comes up and I have to try to throw some kind of personality into a character's bedroom just to give it, I don't know, something that's not completely generic, I just go through the little build and buy catalog and look at pieces and think to myself, do they give this vibe? And so for Mr. Snoops, I chose some very mild fishing decor. Maybe he fishes, and then I put some dirty coffee cups all over his bedroom with little tea bags hanging out of the coffee cups. That's from the clutter kit, and I thought maybe he would drink tea. I don't know. That's all I got for Mr. Snoops. He's kind of unimportant in the scheme of things anyway, but it does give a little tiny something to the room and to the build, and also it's very distinctly different from Madame Medusa's room, so that you don't get anything confused if you come and play here. It's obviously not her bedroom. He also has the only bookshelf on the entire ship in his bedroom, so if you need a book when playing here, there you go. Little playability things and stuff like that to make it easier to use. With all that being said, that is going to be it for the Devil's Bayou, this new residential from the Rescuers. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and let me know your thoughts on everything down below. You will see the Create-A-Sim, the updated Create-A-Sim for the new characters I'm adding from the Rescuers in the next video, so stay tuned for that. And then after that, I'm going to be moving on to the next neighborhood in the Disney save that is mostly Princess and the Frog themed, if not all, but is getting a ton of changes and updates, so you're going to want to see all of that. Make sure you subscribe and join me for all of that and so much more. If you'd like to support the Disney save on Patreon, you can do so by clicking the link in my description box down below or the one at the end of the video. Thank you all so much for watching today, and I will talk to you all in the next one.